17 different ways before you send a text. Your thumb hovers over the screen. You delete what you wrote, rewrite it softer, then delete that too. You want to ask for what you need, but there's this tightness in your chest, a familiar pressure that whispers, don't be difficult. Don't ask for too much. What if they say no? What if they leave? So you send something casual instead, something that requires nothing, and the thing you actually needed stays locked inside you, unspoken, like it always does. If this is familiar, if you recognize that inner negotiation, that instant measuring of whether you're allowed to take up space, then what you're about to hear may shift something fundamental. Because according to Dr. Gabor Maté's research on trauma and attachment, the patterns we call self-sabotage are rarely about willpower or discipline. They are adaptations, survival strategies your nervous system built when you were too young to choose differently. And the reason you keep repeating them isn't because you're broken. It's because you haven't yet understood what they were designed to protect you from. For decades, psychology asked the wrong question. What's wrong with you? Why can't you just be more confident? Why do you keep sabotaging your own success? But Gabor Maté's clinical work consistently reveals a more compassionate inquiry. What happened to you? As children, we all face a fundamental dilemma. We have two essential needs, attachment and authenticity. Attachment is survival. It means staying connected to the people who feed us, hold us, keep us alive. Authenticity is selfhood. It means expressing what we feel, setting boundaries, being seen as we truly are. When the environment is safe and attuned, both needs can coexist. But when they conflict, when being yourself threatens connection, attachment always wins. If crying brought criticism, you learn to suppress tears. If saying no caused rejection, you learn to comply. If your emotions overwhelmed your caregivers, you learn to become small, convenient, easy. From a trauma-informed perspective, this isn't dysfunction, it's brilliance. Your nervous system chose the strategy most likely to keep you safe in that specific environment. The problem is, those patterns don't stay in childhood. They follow you into adulthood, where they no longer serve you, but your body doesn't know that yet. Let's look at three of the most common patterns, and the third one is the one most people refuse to see in themselves. The first pattern, you equate your worth with how much you accomplish. You are the person people count on, reliable, driven, high-performing. You finish projects ahead of schedule. You volunteer before anyone asks. You never let people down. But rest feels like failure. Even on a Sunday afternoon, when you're technically allowed to do nothing, there's this gnawing discomfort, a voice that says you should be productive, that relaxation is laziness, that slowing down means falling behind. You might even feel a strange shame when someone catches you sitting still. Here's what most people miss. According to Gabor Maté, many high achievers were children who learned that love wasn't unconditional. It was conditional on performance. Maybe your parents lit up when you brought home good grades, but were distant when you needed comfort. Maybe praise flowed when you helped, but disappeared when you struggled. Maybe you watched a sibling get attention through crisis, so you earned yours through competence. Your nervous system made a logical adaptation. I am safe when I am useful. Achievement became a form of emotional insurance, and your body wired productivity to survival, not consciously, but deeply. So when you try to rest now, it doesn't just feel uncomfortable, it feels existentially unsafe. Because if you stop doing, who are you? If you stop producing, do you still deserve care? That relentless inner pressure isn't ambition, it's hypervigilance. This doesn't mean you're broken. It means your mind learned to protect you. That drive, that is not arrogance or materialism. That is intelligence in service of survival. But here's the cost. You are exhausted. And no amount of external success has convinced the deepest part of you that you are enough. And this is where it gets deeper, because the second pattern doesn't look like overwork. It looks like the exact opposite. The second pattern, you sabotage opportunities right before they become real. You talk about the career change for months. You research, you plan, you tell friends. But when the application deadline arrives, you freeze. You convince yourself you're not ready. You'll do it next time, when things are more stable, when you're more prepared. Or maybe it's intimacy. You say you want a relationship, but when someone emotionally available shows interest, you suddenly notice their flaws. You pull back, you ghost, you choose people who are unavailable and tell yourself that's why it didn't work. From the outside, it looks like fear of success, or commitment issues, or self-sabotage in its purest form. But from a trauma-informed perspective, it's often something more specific. Many people discover that as children, visibility was dangerous. If standing out invited envy from a sibling, if success triggered a parent's insecurity, if doing well meant increased pressure and scrutiny, if being seen meant being criticized, then invisibility kept you safe. Your nervous system learned small equals safe. The body remembers what the mind was forced to forget. So when an opportunity now asks you to step forward, to be visible, recognized, accountable, your body doesn't register growth. It registers exposure, threat, the possibility of losing connection or inviting harm. And so it protects you with procrastination, with distraction, with sudden, inexplicable fatigue. Psychologists have observed this in trauma survivors again and again. The closer you get to what you want, the louder the inner resistance becomes. Not because you don't want it, but because your nervous system still associates expansion with danger. Not because something was wrong with you, because something was wrong with what happened to you. That isn't weakness. That is a protective part of you trying to keep you safe in the only way it knows how. And now we come to the pattern that runs deepest. The third pattern, the one most people refuse to admit, is this. You abandon yourself to keep others comfortable. You apologize reflexively, even when you're not sure what you did wrong. You scan every room for attention and feel responsible for fixing it. You say yes when you mean no. You downplay your needs. You laugh when something isn't funny. You soften your truth to make it easier to swallow. You call it kindness, empathy, being easygoing. And it is those things, but sometimes it's also survival. According to Gabor Maté, children who grow up with caregivers who are emotionally unpredictable, depressed, overwhelmed, or absent often develop extraordinary attunement. They learn to read facial expressions, vocal tones, energy shifts, because predicting the emotional weather increases safety. You didn't learn empathy as a gift, you learned it as a strategy. If noticing your mother's mood allowed you to adjust your behavior before she snapped. If sensing your father's irritation let you become invisible before conflict erupted. If being helpful kept the peace, then emotional radar became your first line of defense. But here's what that required. It required you to prioritize their feelings over your own. To suppress anger because it was inconvenient. To mute sadness because it was a burden. To become who they needed you to be instead of who you actually were. Your authenticity was sacrificed to preserve attachment. And as an adult, this shows up as chronic people-pleasing. Over-responsibility, difficulty setting boundaries, relationships where you feel indispensable but unseen. You give and give and give, and then resent that no one notices. You say, "I'm fine," while screaming inside. You feel guilty for having needs at all. And when you finally try to assert yourself, when you say no, or disagree, or ask for something, your nervous system floods with panic. Your heart races, your thoughts spiral, you're selfish, you're too much, you're going to lose them. That reaction isn't irrational. That is your nervous system trying to protect the attachment it once depended on for survival. That is not weakness. That is intelligence in service of survival. But here's the tragedy. The very strategies that kept you safe as a child are now the ones keeping you stuck. Overachieving keeps you exhausted. Shrinking keeps you invisible. People-pleasing keeps you resentful and unknown. And none of it is your fault. You are not broken. You adapted. You survived environments that asked you to be smaller, quieter, more useful, less needy. You bent yourself into shapes that kept you connected when disconnection felt like death. Of course, these patterns feel automatic. They were rehearsed thousands of times in a body that had very few options. According to Dr. Maté, healing doesn't begin with self-discipline. It begins with self-compassion, with curiosity instead of condemnation, with asking, what was this pattern protecting me from? When you stop fighting yourself and start understanding yourself, something shifts. The inner war quiets. You stop trying to crush the part of you that hesitates or overworks or people pleases. Instead, you listen to it. You thank it. You tell it. You kept me safe, but I'm learning new ways now. And from that place, not from force, but from tenderness, change becomes possible. This is not quick work. It is slow, private, often invisible. You will not wake up tomorrow suddenly confident and boundaried, but you might notice one small moment. You might rest for 10 minutes without feeling guilty. You might send the application before you feel fully ready. You might say a gentle no and survive the discomfort that follows. Each act of authenticity teaches your nervous system something new. That connection and truth do not have to be enemies. That you can be yourself and still be loved. The same nervous system that learned fear can learn safety. The same mind that built protective walls can build bridges. Neuroplasticity is not a metaphor. It is biology. You are not fighting your nature. You're updating it. And here's the hopeful part. Awareness itself is the beginning. The fact that you're watching this, the fact that something in you is ready to see these patterns, means the change has already started. Not because you've fixed yourself, but because you've stopped believing you needed fixing. Which of these three patterns felt most familiar to you? I genuinely love to know. And if conversations like this feel valuable, if this kind of understanding matters to you, consider subscribing. This channel is built for people who are done fighting themselves and ready to finally understand themselves. Self-awareness will not erase your past, but it can change the way your past lives inside you. And that changes everything.